Good to see you all. All right, so before we get started with our guest speaker, I have to do business stuff. So I'm going to share my screen for my notes, and then we'll get to... Okay, so let's see, Mark Redmond here. I didn't think so. So I think I have everybody on our list. Kim, Aura, Gina. Okay, yep, I think that's everybody. Okay. And if more people pop in, then I will add them. All right, so first things first, we'll open with prayer and then we'll start the business meeting. And then Gina, will have you start speaking to us around quarter till noon until 12:30. Okay? All right, well, let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for this beautiful morning and all these lovely faces joining us. We're so grateful for this group. We're grateful for the opportunity to hear Gina talk with us. We're grateful for you, Lord, and your many blessings. And we ask that you be blessed during this time and continue to use our gifts and talents to glorify you. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, meeting agenda first. So the Christmas anthology. We've decided that that is a go, and June is when it will start. So correct me if I'm wrong. And are we going to keep the same parameters as we decided with the other anthology? A word limit, word count limit, the same due dates, culminating in the final being turned in September. That still sound...
I'm sorry, I thought we had talked about making it the word count a little broader.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
because
yes.
Dana was saying she had trouble. Okay. So what do you think? Our limit last time was 1,200?
Like, yeah, minimum of 1,200 and up to 2,000 would be good, I think.
Okay, that works for me. That still is within
Or 2,500. What do you think, Jennifer?
I think that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good word count. Due dates, rough draft turned in. Oops. I'll check what our due dates were last time, and I think the rough draft was July, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, rough draft by July. Then
that gives everybody a month.
Yeah. And then officers review the content. Then the final draft is due in September. Then that gives all of the officers through the whole month of October to get things finalized, and then we publish in November. So I think that should work.
Good.
And I'll come up with, I mean, we can come up with a title, we can come up with cover ideas in the summer. I have no problem with that. I can help out with that again. May meeting, guest speaker. Were you all okay with Marianne Peterson?
Yes, I am.
I think so. She's really neat. Okay, she's a memoir author, and I think we can learn a lot from her experience and stuff. And I'll just discuss how I was able to talk with a literary agent at the last ACFW I went to, because I do have a memoir inside me somewhere, and I would like to write one, and I want to help a friend write her memoir. So this literary agent was telling me that you still follow the same parameters: exposition, inciting incident, rising action, obstacles, in the path, crisis point, big climactic moment, and then falling action to a resolution. It follows the same format as a fiction, but it's a memoir. So the exposition is smaller, and you're just doing a snapshot of a moment in your life, not the whole autobiography. So I thought that it would be neat to talk with Marianne and maybe talk about memoir writing, how it's very similar to fiction writing. Now, meeting over the summer, we decided not to. We decided to take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
That
what we
works for me.
decided.
Yes.
Because it's a little, I mean, people go on vacations and it's just busy.
It is, and we're going to be doing the anthology, and we want to give everybody
Mhm.
time to write in between vacations and stuff. So, okay, so beginning in June and all the way through August, no meetings, and or no, do we usually start up again in August? Or is it
I
Depends
thought
on
it was
the year.
September.
depends on the year?
I think September's usually, we're always started by September.
Okay, so start
Right,
up again.
September.
No summer meetings. Start up again in September. Now, ACFW announced they're doing their conference again online. So if anybody's going to the conference, let me know. I don't plan on going to it this year, but things could change. We'll see. Is anybody planning on going to ACFW this year?
I haven't thought about it yet.
Yeah, I have to think about it some too.
I'm trying
Okay,
to put in 20 books, and it's just like I feel like they're too close together. I couldn't do both.
sure. Yeah, that's the start of conference season. Okay, and then do we have any other agenda items? I couldn't remember.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Do we want to try and go back to Denny's in
Oh.
the fall?
Thanks for bringing that up. One of our members emailed me and asked if we would be willing to do that. Now, I'm fine with it. You know, I'm not high risk for getting it, or, you know, I work from home, so transmitting it, I think I'm pretty low too. So let me know if you feel like we should meet again. I could still do it via Zoom
That's
because
what I
that's
was
my
gonna
account.
ask.
So we could do both. We could be in
Do
person
both.
and have it via Zoom for those who don't feel comfortable coming.
I like that idea.
Like that?
I-
Okay.
Me too.
I think it would be nice for those who do feel comfortable to get back together,
Yeah, me too. I miss it.
especially if we're talking
miss
that
it.
many months out. Yeah.
I miss it.
Okay, I'll contact Denny's. If they're still doing it. They may not. The Denny's, when I go see my dad in Prescott Valley, the Denny's out there just opened up their dining room, but not their big gathering room. So I'll have to call and find out if they're doing that.
They
They
might
might-
limit us to the number of people we can have there.
Yeah, I was
Maybe
thinking the
like
same thing.
8 or 10 or something.
That's true. They might limit. Okay, so I'll call them and find out, and I'll in the next email, I'll let everybody know what was decided. Okay. Anything else then? I think that was it on my agenda. Just the anthology. September speakers. I know Liz Johnson has a book coming out in August. She might be willing to come talk to us about her book and about writing at that time. Sarah Ella might be willing to, because she has a book coming out in 2022, so she might be willing to come talk to us again. I could see if Sarah Sundin is available, but September, you know, at the conferences, she might not be
Right.
available, but maybe October or something, she might be able to, but I'll reach out to her and see what I'm friends with Rachel Hauk. I could see if she might be able to. Is any genre okay for the anthology? Good question. What are we planning for the anthology? The same thing that we did for the other one, or is this narrower because it's Christmas stories?
Well, I think Christmas stories would, you know, have romance. I mean, it's going to be different. Romance. Somebody might do a mystery or
Yeah.
something. You know.
That's true.
So,
Historical,
historical, yes.
biblical.
I kind of feel like as long as it's Christmas appropriate,
Yeah.
you know, the genre is less
Yeah.
important than that.
Okay,
Right.
so it could be contemporary Christmas, you know, a Christmas time set now. It could be historical Christmas, like
I mean, you
Regency, or
Could you even do you could even do some speculative if you wanted to do like a time travel story.
oh, that would be neat. Okay,
That might be
Wonderful idea,
fun.
Rebecca.
that'd be fun. Okay, so basically, Kim, the same genres, but it has to be Christmas. Christmas has to be the setting. A memoir type story. Are we just doing fiction? Aura wants to ask about memoirs. Are we just doing fiction?
If it's a Christmas story, I think it should be fine if it's like creative nonfiction. I mean, I would be okay with that.
I'm okay with that. In fact, I think I'd like that,
Okay.
you know.
Does
a
that
bit of
answer your
truth.
question, Aura?
I agree.
Okay, good. Christmas spirit experience in Mexico. Okay, great.
Perfect.
So yeah, I think some, nonfiction and all the different genres for Christmas, as long as it's Christmas focused, would work. Okay.
And are we sticking with this has to not have been published previously?
I think so. Unpublished stories, we don't want to get into any issues with publishers out there saying, hey, you're under contract with this, or something. So yeah, as long as they're not published previously, whether
Elsewhere.
it's self-published or in a magazine or in a book, they cannot be published elsewhere.
Okay.
And all right, great. So I'll get those due dates ready for the May email that goes out. I'll look at our previous notes, meeting notes for all the due dates that we had previously and get that drafted up in the next email to send out. The word limit was 1,200 to 2,000 words per story, Dawn. Okay. All right, then. Great. Well, I'm excited to introduce you to our guest speaker, Gina Detweiler. She and I met via Instagram, and I posted that I'm needing authors to interview for my podcast, and she and I got together, had a great interview, and I thought she'd be wonderful to come on our group to talk to us about her writing journey and some of the books that she's written. She has written a series with Priscilla Shirer. Isn't that neat? And she has drafted the Forlorn series about fighting spiritual warfare. And that is definitely something I want to get into, writing a series like that as well. So welcome, Gina. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your fascinating writing journey. I think we're all going to enjoy this. I'm going to mute everybody. So Gina, you're going to be muted and then you'll have to unmute. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
So
grace in advance, because I have never done I'm doing a keynote presentation on Zoom before. So
okay.
I'm hoping that it works, and I prayed about it. I'm curious to know what everybody here writes before I start, just to get an idea of what your genres are. Can you just kind of give me an idea of that? Oh, you're all on mute. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind.
Okay.
That probably wasn't a good idea.
No, they can unmute themselves if you want to talk.
Yeah, if you can unmute just real quick and let me know, I'd really appreciate it.
I personally write middle grade fantasy adventure and then mystery thrillers for kids. And then I'm writing a women's fiction right now, contemporary women's fiction right now. Aura said she writes historical fiction, children's religious, and self-help.
Oh, okay.
And then Gina, contemporary fiction. Nice.
Okay.
I write primarily historical romance, but I've kind of found a niche in between 1950 and 1975. But my latest book that just came out last month is actually a split time that probably more women's fiction than romance, but it has a good amount of romance.
Okay. Good. Okay.
Oh, and Kim writes
Cozy
picture
Dog
books.
series.
Yeah,
okay.
Cozy Dog series.
Great. Cozy
picture
Dogs.
Books.
Picture books. All right. This is good. So I don't know. This may be like totally out of left field for some of you, but others of you probably are familiar with this kind of world of spiritual warfare. So I'm going to try to share my screen and host disabled participant screen sharing.
Here, I'll fix that. I'll let you share. Hold on 1 second. Okay, see if you can share now. It's the green button at the bottom.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm going to go get something to drink and I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay. So this is kind of where I where I've come from in my journey of writing, and I'm sure you all can relate to this, is when you have more time behind you than in front of you, you sort of look back and you go, you can see how God led you down this path without, you really even knowing it or even paying attention. For a long time, I really wasn't paying any attention to God. And yet when I look back, I can see how he led me down this path, because it was never something I planned on from the beginning. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my backstory that will maybe help you understand where I got to. I was brought up in, let me see if I can, how do you switch? Okay. I was brought up in a very religious family, brought up in Catholic, and let me turn my notes off here. And I was very involved in our church. We did theater. That's me and Godspell there. We did Godspell in church. And I did singing with the folk group, and music was a big part of my life in the church. But interestingly, we didn't really have discussions growing up in church about the devil, about demonic warfare. Any of that stuff really wasn't a part of my faith growing up, my religion at all. I did love, the books like King Arthur and Lord of the Rings, and those books that had those grand themes of good and evil, and the knights and all that stuff was really fascinating to me, and I love that. But in terms of the devil, was never really a part of my life. In fact, I think, like most of us, the devil was kind of a fantasy character from movies. I mean, these were some of the movies just from the 70s about the devil, and it was all very imaginary and fantasy and horror, but nothing real. It never seemed to be a real part of my world. Later on, after I graduated from college, I went to Germany. I worked in Germany as an entertainment director for the Army. And let's see, okay. And I, fell in love with castles. If you've been to Germany, if you've been to anywhere in Europe, the castles are amazing. And this whole world, which is sort of semi-fantasy, but also real, the medieval, if you've done historical fiction, there's, it sort of blends together. The whole idea of, the knights and the castles and the battles and all that stuff just really intrigued me. And also working for the military and getting to know the military people. And my husband, that's a picture of us a long, long, long time ago. He was in the Army, and he just loved the Army and loved, anything to do with battles and warfare and all that stuff. And so I learned a lot from him. And I got really sort of entranced by this whole world that I did not grow up around, at all. So that was kind of part of what engaged me. So after we got married, and I got really bored with my life because I did have a job, but I didn't, I was an English and drama major in college, and I was mainly wanting to do theater, and there was nothing really to do where we lived. So I decided I'm going to try writing a novel, because why not, and I did not have any experience writing a novel. I never took a creative writing course, even though I had been an English major. So I decided to write something about this kind of era, medieval warfare kind of thing. And I wrote this book, which ended up becoming this book, The Hammer of God. This is my maiden name that I use for self-published stuff. I spent about 25 years working on this book. And it was interesting that first of all, it helped me learn how to write books, because I didn't know any idea. I had no idea what I was doing. But it also was, it sort of morphed from in the beginning, when it was really, I wanted it to be more of a romantic story. It morphed into like this story about warfare and everything. And then it became a story about God, which was surprising to me, because at that point I had really abandoned God. I'd really kind of walked away from faith for a long time. And it brought me back to wanting to know what I really believed. Did I really believe in God anymore? Who was God? What was all that about? So that was kind of this book in particular, I think for me, it's still my favorite one because it's the one that brought me on this journey back to finding God again. So shortly after, while this was going on, we did end up joining a church, and it was a Presbyterian church because we had kids, so we had to have a church, to go to. And Presbyterian church is a big departure for me from the Catholic church. Like wow, there's no mass. People read the Bible. I mean, we didn't read the Bible growing up. We had a missalette, and that was pretty much it. And they made up their own prayers. That was the big shocker. Like, you can just make up a prayer, like just pray whatever you want. that was really stunning to me, I have to say. So it was great. And I got involved in the worship ministry. I was on the worship team and, still doing a lot of music stuff there. But the other strange departure was that I was suddenly having conversations with people about the devil, about spiritual warfare, which was a phrase I had never heard before. In fact, the first conference I went to was on the armor of God, which was also something I'd never heard of before. And we're talking back in the early to mid 90s now. Okay. So I was starting to learn about these concepts, and I was starting to see them in life too. In fact, there was another conference I went to. There was a woman who was a Christian who had come from the New Age movement. And she did a pretty interesting lecture on, her experience in the New Age movement and how the New Age has sort of co-opted a lot of concepts and ideas and things from Christianity and twisted them and turned them around and made them into this other thing. So basically taking a truth and making it a lie. And I found that really, really interesting. Just how, like Satan in the garden kind of thing, so it really sort of raised my awareness a lot of what was like going on. There might be a spiritual world here, there might be something going on. In the meantime, I was still trying to be a novelist and write a book that someone would buy. And so I decided I was going to write I was advised actually to write a contemporary novel. So I wrote a beach book, basically. Avalon is a little town in New Jersey that we go every summer. So I thought I'll write a beach book and maybe someone will buy it. And well, nobody did. But I did self-publish this, and actually was able to sell it like at the bookstore in Avalon, which was great. But I still had no agent. I still couldn't seem to sell a book. And so that was kind of a struggle. It kind of put me into a little bit of a funk. Like I didn't know what I was going to do anymore, with my life, with what I, if I was going to write books or not. You get to that stage where you've had so much rejection, you just don't know if you can take anymore. But there were three things that changed my focus and sort of changed the trajectory of where I was going with my writing. The first one this was around 2012. I believe this happened in 2012. It was Sandy Hook. It was the horrible, horrible school shooting that just, it's beyond comprehension how something like this could happen. It seemed so awful to me. It was just so awful to all of us. I mean, we were all just devastated by it. I'm sure you all were. And this picture in particular, this picture of this killer just chilled me. I could not, there was something going on here. If you look in his eyes, those eyes and that face, I just felt there was something demonic here. And I just wanted to find out more. So I started to do, just research on how does the demons work in this world? How is this happening? Is there demonic influence here? I didn't know, but I wanted to find out. And I found it very fascinating that when you read stories on all of the motivations of like school shooters in particular, they look at psychological, they look at mental, emotional, environmental issues, but they never talk about spiritual issues. And I thought, we as human beings are spiritual beings. In addition to being psychological and intellectual and all those other things, we are spiritual beings, and that part of ours is being ignored. That's kind of how I felt anyway. And so I won't go into a long discussion about that, but one of the things I did notice when looking at all of the different school shooters and what they had said themselves, almost all of them hate God. I mean, hate God. There's a hatred of God that pervades that whole thing, which I found very interesting and curious, and I wanted to know more. The second thing that really affected my change of venue in terms of writing was Harry Potter. My kids grew up in the age of Harry Potter. My middle child was the big Harry Potter aficionado, just absolutely loved everything Harry Potter, belonged to every club, knew everything about Harry Potter. My other kids really were into Twilight and Percy Jackson. So I noticed some things about these books. I mean, of course, they're supernatural stories, there's supernatural elements. And what's really interesting to me is that they've taken the bad guys and made them the good guys. Okay, so you have vampires, who's the hero, and witches who are the heroes, and werewolves and pagan gods, and all these things that are traditionally the bad guys are now the good guys, which I found very interesting. Also, that there's no God, that God is absent from all of these books. And my other daughter was also really into, Hunger Games and all those books. God is absent. There is no God. So I found that very curious. And I put up the Lucifer one here because I don't know if you've ever seen this show, but Lucifer is actual Satan come to earth as this handsome, charming guy who does good. I mean, he's a good guy. What he does in the story, because he's working with this FBI character, is he punishes bad guys. This is what this Lucifer does, and he's Lucifer, he's Satan, as opposed to this other show, Dominion, which is about bad angels. I mean, so the angels are the bad guys in this one show, and Satan is the good guy in this other show. So, there's just been this blurring of lines between good and evil. Ruth and I had a long discussion about that in our interview. So I just found that very fascinating. There's also the show Supernatural, with my kids also loved, that also there's like good, there's these demons that are good, and there's angels that are bad, and there's all of this mix up. So I found that, kids are very impressionable. They're very attracted to this sort of dark side thing. They're very interested in this war of good and evil. They're very interested in the battle. But the battle lines are very blurry, and the good guys and the bad guys are very blurry, and God is not there at all. So, my hope was to try to maybe write something that would be, put God back in the story. The third thing that really affected me at this time was my own depression. I went through a period of darkness. I think kind of we all do at some point in our lives, or maybe more often than once, where I just was sort of depressed. I couldn't sleep. I just had just this hopelessness, this heaviness, this really difficulty that I just couldn't get past. I tried antidepressants and the side effects were terrible. So it didn't work for me at all. But I came across a ministry at our church called Streams of Freedom, which is based on this ministry, the Wellsprings of Freedom, which is in, I forget where it is, in Indianapolis, maybe, Indiana. Somewhere, Wisconsin, I don't know. But anyway, it's a deliverance ministry. It's basically a prayer ministry. And so I went and signed up for this. And I went in, and there's this group of people, and there's discerners, and these are the people who discern spirits. They can discern the spirits that are attacking you. And there's these intercessors, and they're praying for to cast out these spirits. Doing this ministry was when the battle became real to me. Now, this was a real battle. I mean, I can't even begin to describe how this affected my life. I learned about, how demons work. I learned they have names, that they have particular missions, that there are certain ones that do certain things. And they're well known, especially to these people who are very experienced in this kind of ministry. Has anyone ever had any experience? You can like nod or whatever with deliverance ministry. I don't know if any of you had, but it was just so eye-opening and it was just unbelievable. It just changed my whole life. And the emotional part of it was, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Voyage of the Dawn Treader or read the book, when the little character, Eustace is his name, is he's turned into a dragon. And in order to, he has to get rid of the dragon's skin. And it doesn't happen all at once. And he's like, got to tear off these layers of dragon skin. And then there's another one underneath, and he's got to tear it off of himself. And it just keeps going on and on until he gets rid of all that dragon. And I literally felt like that's what I went through in this ministry. In fact, my skin was so sore and sensitive. I could hardly even touch my own skin. It was that kind of really physical, emotional. It was such a powerful experience. And yet the freedom I experienced afterward was incredible. So this became a real war to me. This became, this spiritual war was a real war. So, that led me into wanting to try to learn more about the spiritual, supernatural world of the Bible and write a story about it. So I started doing a bunch of research and reading the Bible as a supernatural book, which I had not really ever seen before. It wasn't something that was taught in our church or any of the churches I'd been to. Like the whole Genesis 6 story with the Nephilim and the fallen angels and all that stuff, and Revelation with the dragon and, the armor of God and all this. It was just eye-opening to me. I highly recommend this book, The Unseen Realm, if you haven't read it already, on recovering the supernatural worldview of the Bible, which is, Michael Heiser is a really great authority on this subject. So this is, was the research I was doing. And I also was doing a lot of research on Satanism, on the New Age movement, on cults, on heavy metal, and all those things that seem to be the counterbalance to what to what God was trying to do, and the God and Satan thing. So I started to write these books, and I've written, there's 3 that have been published so far. So the first book, Forlorn, and these are basically YA, speculative, supernatural books. The first one was really Forlorn. It was really a personal spiritual warfare, like girl versus demon, the sort of personal spiritual warfare that I went through, in terms of like what I went through with the streams of freedom. There's a lot in that book that actually comes out of like real stories of mine and other people that I know. There's also a Nephilim character in this book too that goes through the whole series. Forsaken dealt with spiritual warfare more on the cultural level, goes into more the Satanism, the world of rock and roll, music and drugs and all that stuff, fun stuff, And Forgiven is dealing with spiritual warfare on a more in the scientific realm. Dealing with theoretical physics and Darwinism and genetic manipulation and things like that. So there's a 4th book that it's written, but I don't know when it will be out. It's called Forbidden, and that's dealing with the spiritual warfare of a global, on a global scale, which is what I feel like we're dealing with now in our world. We are facing global oppression right now. So those, and there will be a 5th book too. Originally were only supposed to be 3, and then it just kept going and going and going. So that's how that goes. You see the guitar at the bottom because music plays a big part in these books. Music is one of the main weapons against the demon world in these books. And this was also something I researched a lot. And, there's lots of stories in the Bible about how music was used to fight battles. There's what my favorite is, of course, when David played his harp to get rid of the evil spirits that were oppressing Saul. There's the army, Joshua's army marching, or the people marching around Jericho and playing trumpets and shouting. There's Gideon, and then there's Jehoshaphat, who sent his, priests out first in this battle to sing. And while they were singing, the army totally fell apart that was attacking them. And actually, it's interesting that I wrote a book also about the Crusades that has never been published, but that's what they did in the Crusades. In the first Crusade, when they were attacking Jerusalem, they actually sent the priests out first to sing. And they were singing the whole entire day that battle went on. So kind of fascinating. This also led me into a sidetrack, which was kind of fun and interesting to me, on the principle of harmonic resonance and how harmonic resonance affects the physical world. Are any of you from like the Washington area? Have you heard of the Galloping Gertie, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge? Back in the 40s, this bridge was built. It's a suspension bridge. And one day, in a particularly strong wind, it started warping. Like, I wish you should get online and watch the video, because it's unbelievable. It's like flopping and flipping like a.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
You've seen that? Like a wet noodle. And these are steel girders, and concrete and all this stuff just warping. And they talk about how it's the harmonic resonance that created this phenomenon. Bridge just totally destroyed by it. So that, that's kind of when you think about Joshua and the people walking around the walls of Jericho, yes, God did it. God created that miracle, but I don't believe that marching around was just busy work. There was a purpose to that. There was a purpose to the noise they made and the trumpets blowing and all those things, because this phenomenon really exists, and it battles not only in the physical world, but in the spiritual world as well. So I found this to be a really interesting idea, and sort of goes back to how the power of music in the spiritual world and in the physical world, So in fact, my husband, the army guy, told me that when armies would march across bridges, they had to be careful not to march. They had to not march in step. They had to walk over, because a bridge would collapse because of the rhythm from the marching, not the weight of the people. It was the rhythm, the resonance from the rhythm, that would actually cause these bridges to collapse. So kind of an interesting side note there. So anyway, I had written 2 of these books and still did not have a publisher when I got this call from my agent about Priscilla Shirer. And she was writing a series. She wanted to write a series for kids on, guess what? Spiritual warfare. Okay. So like God, only God can do this. This the past 3 years of my life had been just researching and working on these books and researching spiritual warfare and all this. And along comes this call saying, they want to do this. And I found out that these stories, what Priscilla had written was short stories. She had written some short stories for her kids years before. And she was talking with the VeggieTales guys, the big idea about doing a cartoon series. But that just never happened. It just never came about. And it was about 6 years later when her publisher decided, hey, let's try to make these into books. So, it was all in God's timing. And it just was amazing to me. And like when it came to me, I was like ready for this. I was ready for this. I feel like sometimes God makes you wait a really long time, but the waiting time is preparation time. It's when it happens, you'll be ready. So this was a really exciting. Also, what was really funny was that they really wanted an unknown writer, because they didn't want to pay somebody a whole lot. So if I had gotten a publishing deal before this, I probably wouldn't have gotten this job. So, only God can do this. So so we did the first 3 books, which are based on the armor of God. And then the publisher decided they wanted to do a 4th book, which she didn't have any material for. So we just had some brainstorming sessions and came up with some more material to do a 4th book. I just go back to this verse, one of my favorite verses, now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine according to his power that is at work within us. I feel like that's kind of my life verse in a way, because I could never have imagined this journey. I could never have imagined doing what I'm doing now. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what's going to happen next. But I feel like I know that I can trust God with that. And that's a really cool thing.
Absolutely.
So a couple more, I did write this book too for Lifeway, just as a contract writer, the Ultimate Bible Character Guide, which is also fun. It's for kids. And then the prequel of the Forlorn series is coming out next month. So
Congratulations.
that's
awesome.
my story.
I love that. Isn't that exciting? I just love that journey. That is such a unique journey I hadn't heard before. And that's why I thought it'd be great to come talk to everybody, because Rebecca did a session for us last month about spiritual warfare and the writer and how we battle. So I thought this is
Yes.
a great segue from that to show how you took spiritual warfare and pretty much wrote these stories to show how it exists, but you added God to the story, and that's the important thing. You're right. Those very famous novels and stuff, they don't mention God at all, which is ironic because in Harry Potter, they have a Christmas scene. It's hard to have Christmas without God, but
Yeah.
so I just wanted to ask, what is your writing process? Like, how do you go about writing? Do you plan, or is it just seat of your pants? Or
I'm pretty much the seat of the pants type. I'd never have planned anything. And I don't like to, because I really like to be surprised, I guess. But I do try to commit to 1,000 words a day. I feel like that's a good discipline. And I'm one of those people that lacks discipline in general. So I feel like I can make a discipline for myself to write 1,000 words a day. Even if I delete them all the next day, that's just a good discipline for me. And it's just fun as a writer, as as writers, to, the journey of discovery. It's just very exciting. And I feel like God has taught me so much through writing stories. Like I did write a lot of church drama too. And I felt like that was my love language. This is God, how God speaks to me is through stories. And so that's just something I'll never quit doing, even if I never sell a book or, no one reads them or whatever. I feel like that's still how God will speak to me. So I'll just keep doing it,
Fantastic. Good for us. Anybody have any questions for Gina about her writing or anything? Yes, no. Okay. Had you thought before about going back to writing for adults only? I know these are YA, but could be considered for adults too, but maybe like a contemporary women's fiction or something.
I did write a sequel to Avalon called Antilia, which is adult women's contemporary. And so, yeah, and I have this Crusades book that I would love to do something with someday, but, because I still love historical fiction and I still love women's fiction. I love all those things. So we'll see, if I ever finish this series, we'll see what's next.
Right.
As you know, I noticed from a lot of your comments that a lot of you write in multiple genres. And, when I go to these conferences, these writer conferences, and they always say, oh, don't do that. If you write in multiple genres. But I mean, I feel like most of us do. We have more than one interest and we want to, explore lots of different genres. So, Oh,
I
wow.
agree. I think if a story comes to you, you should run with it instead of taking a story that dawns on you and say, well, I'm going to put it in the historical genre, because that's what I write. Well, if you feel it's set in contemporary, then write it in contemporary,
Yeah. I feel like
Fantastic.
putting God in the story can be very tricky too, because there are people that will just um, close the book
Yeah.
as soon as oh, there's God in here. Forget it. I don't want to read this.
Yeah.
This
And
is a Christian book.
you and I talked about how Lord of the Rings was great in that he, even though he didn't mention God, right? But you can tell the absolute evil
Hmm.
of the evil presence and then the absolute good of the good presence. And
Yeah.
I like how in the movies, Peter Jackson made the evil characters look disgusting. There was nothing appealing to them at all. And I thought that that was very important to see what happens to you when you are overtaken by evil. It just, makes you a mutant and just totally ruins you. And even though in the real world it's a little bit more subtle than that, but it does happen. So yeah, I appreciate that you're willing to take this on and be honest about how when you do stand up and say, I'm going to write about spiritual warfare, then Satan attacks, and we have to be ready for that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and he did. And I will say that writing about this stuff leaves you much more open to attack. One of the things I learned in the streams of freedom was that, there are ways, there are avenues that Satan and, that demons can work. And it's often when you open yourself up to attack. And a lot of it was just getting steeped in all of this information you could get sunk into the darkness there. And then there's also, things like unforgiveness, and there are certain things that just open yourself up to demonic attack that can be very tricky, and you don't even know that's happening. You don't even know. So anyway,
It's true. You need to be prepared. And like Nietzsche said, whoever fights monsters, stares into the abyss, but the abyss stares back into you. So you have to be very prepared if you're going to go down that road. I was sharing with Gina that years ago, I wanted to write a series of YA books about demon fighters, these young high school kids who have the ability to fight demons. And this was before Supernatural came out. But I hit like a major wall and decided to put it away, and I'd like to revisit it again. But you're right. If I pull that series back out again to write, I have to be prepared for the battle that is going to happen. So
yeah, you really do. You really do. And I think if it hadn't been for my small group, I never would have gotten through those years, just having a small group of women that would willing to like drop everything and pray with me. And, just, that was huge. It was huge.
Makes a
But
difference.
as you know, as writers, there's a lot of, there's a lot of tough stuff you have to go through to get a story out there. And I don't know how you do it without God. I don't know.
I don't either. I guess Lucifer comes in a nice Armani suit and helps you out.
With his lovely British accent,
And I have some Christian friends who wrote on Facebook one time, "Oh my gosh, why hasn't anybody told me about Lucifer? It's amazing." And I thought, well, there's a British show, I think, with Idris Elba. So I thought she was talking about that one, but no, she was talking about the one with Satan. And I was like, what? You're watching this show? I didn't say anything to her, but in my head, I was thinking, you're going down a dangerous path.
Yeah, to the uninitiated, to people that don't know the different, the real Satan, that seems right. Like, oh yeah, Satan is just this guy who, was disobedient, but he really wants to help people now.
Yeah, he's
he really
redeemable,
wants to,
right?
He wants to punish bad people. That's what Satan does, I just
He is not redeemable. He is doomed.
Yeah.
Right.
So
horrible. Well, okay. Any questions for Gina before we go? Anybody want to ask her about writing or?
I have a question. Priscilla Shire is like a hero to me. And I'm sure that you actually sat down and talked with her, right? I'd just like a little bit of input about that.
What we did was we had meetings in Dallas at her house, well, her office, I guess, which was on her property. We would go down there for like these all-day meetings with the publishing team, with her and her husband, who's her manager. And we just had these long brainstorming sessions. We did 1 or 2 of them for each book. So yeah, it was really fun.
Mm.
to just to hear her talk. I mean, she is a very, very authentic person. Like what you see on the screen is really her. And she just had this, she's this tremendous heart for kid. I mean, this was, geared toward kids, but it came out alongside her Armor of God Bible study. So it was sort of a companion piece for the Armor of God Bible study. But yeah, there was something else I was going to tell you about.
I imagine she was fun. I mean, I
Oh
assume
gosh,
the fun person. Yeah.
so fun. Yeah, so
She
fun.
seems neat. I'm
Um,
using her awaken prayer journal every morning, and I really, really love it.
Yeah. Yeah, she's really, really good. I'm doing her Elijah study right now,
I
which
wanna
is
get that
wonderful,
one. Yeah, I wanna
which
get
is
that
really
one.
wonderful. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, any other questions for
I
Gina?
don't have a question. I just want to say how much I appreciated this. I'm 72 years old and grew up in a Pentecostal background. And so demonic forces, good versus evil, God versus the devil. I grew up on all of that stuff, but you don't hear very much about it anymore unless it's something like Lucifer that says, oh, he's really a
They
nice guy.
romanticize it, I know.
Yes. And so when you were talking, I just had chill bumps and I thought, oh, we need to hear more about this kind of stuff.
When Gina and I were talking, that she had mentioned Europe, and when I had a chance to go on a short mission trip to Slovakia, you'd be amazed how in Eastern Europe,
Yes.
it is a hot topic over there. A lot of the new Christians that I met, we had watched a big baptism, and this young man gave his testimony how he was deep into Satan worship. I mean, it started off with walking away from God, and then getting into drugs and alcohol, and then pornography, and it just kept getting deeper and deeper, and then he turned into the occult, and then he painted his whole bedroom black.
Yeah.
And hung up paper over his windows to keep the sunlight out, because he was taught the light is wrong, it's bad. And then, even then, in the midst of all of that, God grabbed him, took a hold of him, saved him. And this was in 2009. And I follow him on Instagram. I mean, he was into like homosexuality and everything. I follow him on Facebook and Instagram. And he and his wife have been married now for about 6 years. They have 2 beautiful children. He is strong in the ministry. He helps young men leave the sinful lifestyle. But as we talked to so many people there in Eastern Europe, and they would say, please pray for me. I'm being haunted by these demons from my past. But we call it depression. We call it, schizophrenia. We call it the blues. But out there, they know it's spiritual warfare, and they would ask us to specifically pray for that. And I was like, wow, this is amazing how in tune they were to that. So yeah, in America, Hollywood did a great job of painting it as this pretty picture, and then psychology and counseling came alongside. So when we are battling with depression and anxiety and everything as Christians, it is best to stop and assess, am I in spiritual warfare? Is this true? What do I need to focus on? And be in God's word and seek him, rather than immediately say, oh, I need to get on medications and such. Now, I know there are times for that, and I am not, belittling that. But for me personally, I know a lot of it comes from spiritual warfare. When I'm involved in ministry, when I'm about to teach a women's Bible study, God allows me to be attacked. So it's important that we have those discussions rather than just romanticize it. And I don't know if you saw that movie where the husband put the camera in the bedroom because they suspected a ghost or something. Oh, what was it called? Paranormal.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it.
My son and I watched that one time. This was years ago. He was in high school, and we were watching it during the day. And I was thinking it's a ghost story, right? It was interesting because the covers on her bed would move, and they had it filmed and all stuff. And then in the middle of the movie, they have a guy come in and tell them, this is not a ghost, this is a demon, and you need to get out of this house immediately. And when that twisted, when they put the word demon on it, I was petrified. I was like, oh my gosh, you know why? Because now it's gone from fantasy, cute little ghosts to the real
Yeah.
supernatural realm. This stuff exists.
Yeah.
And that made it even scarier. They didn't sugarcoat it. They didn't romanticize it. I mean, the demon was evil,
Yep.
and they made it look real. So I thought that was good. But I tell you what, as soon as it went from, oh, I think this is a ghost, to no, this is a demon, and you need to get out of here. You need to deal with it. It's after you. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So sometimes we Christians tend
Yeah.
to, we don't take that seriously enough, I don't think.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it. It's been kind of whitewashed out of the curriculum, I guess, and which to our detriment. You know,
Yeah.
we're going to be unprepared
Yeah, Paul
for
wrote
the
about it
battle.
for a reason, right? He wrote about it for a very specific reason. The church, the early church was struggling, and we would be wise to be in Ephesians 6.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Well, any other comments from anybody about Gina and her books and her presentation? No?
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. And it was also good for me to sort of get all this in one place so I could, you know, look at it all from a perspective of, you know, just the long perspective. And that was really helpful for me. So thank you so much for inviting me to come on.
My
Talk to you
pleasure.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you,
really
Gina. Thank you.
appreciate it.
This
I'm
is
so glad we
wonderful.
were able to connect. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And best of luck with all your writing, and bless you all, you know, and enjoy your day. Enjoy your beautiful sunny day. We have some sun here.
Should be about 80 degrees here, so we're pretty lucky. Perfect time of year.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect
We're
weather.
just getting past 50 degrees here, so
Oof.
it's a little chilly, but
And that's Pittsburgh, right? Or Pennsylvania?
yeah, I'm in
Outside
near
Pittsburgh.
Philadelphia area
Okay, near
right
Philly.
now. Yeah, but it's better than I used to be in Buffalo, so it's definitely better than, you know,
Ooh.
I'm moving in the right direction anyway.
Heading towards Florida, right?
Trying to get there. Don't think I will. My husband's he doesn't like hot weather, so oh well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And thanks
Thank you,
everyone
guys.
for joining. I'll send out the recording in our email, and it'll be on the website. So if any friends of yours want to watch it, or if you want to rewatch this, I'll put it on our website. But other than that, thank you so much. And everybody enjoy your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.